Today, in another episode of WIP Wonder Woman, we feature Soundari Mukherjea, who is an organization consultant and a business storytelling coach. Hi, Soundari.
Thanks, Mandeep. It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you in this forum. I know we've had a lot of conversations in the past, including my first one way back in 96, but this one is special.
I know. I must tell people that Soundari is an alumna of IIM Calcutta, and she worked in the finance, operations, banking in organizations like Unilever and ANZ Grindlays before jumping into the entrepreneurship bandwagon with her company called Tea Soil, and in the new avatar, Soundbites 11, right?
Absolutely.
And I wanted to tell you that she works with university as a visiting faculty, of course. She's worked with law firms, banks, consulting firms, and she's very passionate about the startup ecosystem and has been also organizing programs for women. And that's how we recently reconnected, and we spoke about a lot of things that she's passionate about, providing opportunities to women during her work that she has been doing. And I just wanted to have her here and share all the work that she's been doing and what we have been trying to tell all the WIP women about reinventing themselves. And that is, you're a great example of that, Soundari.
I particularly love the name that you've put, while it's Women in Power, but I also like what it could stand for in the ordinary context of work in progress, which because pretty much sums my life.
We all are.
Yeah.
That's something I must say. My daughter Nanki brought up that part of it as a co-founder. So let me begin with something which I usually love to ask people. Tell me about your story thus far.
Regular middle-class South Indian household. So that's the visual where like riches were measured by hard work, academic focus, and leading a very happy, normal life. My dad was one of 8 children, and growing up, he realized that being in his village in Tanjavur wasn't going to help his ambitions. And he's like one of the most dynamic people I knew, always curious, always trying new things, learning and helping others with his knowledge. And that is something I hope I've taken from him. My mother grew up in a really rich cultural background, religious household, but where women didn't really step out and study. But her dad was keen to make that change for her. Unfortunately, family circumstances being what they were, she started working at 17, shelving her dreams about going to college, but traveling great distances through public transport and trains when there were not that many women from her background who were even stepping out of the house. So education was always a very big driver for us. The courage to become independent, be brave, carve a path for ourselves kind of thing. And I remember like during summers, every summer in school, I would make a list of summer classes that I wanted to attend and ask my parents for money to register in them. Small amounts, but what looked for me as large amounts at that time. But my parents never said no. And in the process, I ended up doing so many different things. I'd go for quiz clubs, I'd go for singing, though I can't hold a tune. I'd go for dancing, puppet making, drawing, tailoring. I learned shorthand, which seems like an archaic thing at the moment. But at the time, I just was doing everything and anything. And so I feel like I graduated in doing summer classes. And this is something that I continue to date, love checking out new things, will sign up and keep trying new apps, tools. Anybody says they're doing a beta, I would sign up and, check it out.
So that's a chance upon storytelling suddenly. That's interesting.
Yeah. I know. It's like one of those things that I remember when I was about 8 or 10, a friend of my dad's visited us from Delhi. For me, living in Madras, as it was called at that time, Delhi was this exotic place with Red Fort and Rashtrapati Bhavan and even Taj Mahal. I didn't know that Taj Mahal was in a different place. It was all up north thing. And he gave me his visiting card and it had 10 degrees listed after his name. I remember gazing at it at wonder. And after he left, I told my dad, my appa, that, I want to have 10 degrees after my name. But it only took about 3 degrees to know that, there's difference between being educated and learning. So I think this is something that stayed with me. And one of the things that, you mentioned about Unilever and ANZ and all that life, but I was starting to look at having a portfolio career. And one of the things that I remember Leena Nayar's, her person who she looked up to, a person called Andrea Jung, she told her about following your compass and not your clock. And that stayed with me because careers were changing, and maybe we can talk about the career bit later. But I was listening to John Flint, who is one of the past CEOs of HSBC, and he says that in his 30-year career, he has produced 1 million PowerPoint slides, and nobody remembers a word of what he wrote in that. But he also told stories along the way, personal stories of high points, low points, successes, failures, and people are still talking about it, though he's no longer with the firm. So stories in that sense are a great way to engage with people. They say always that facts and figures go to the head and stories go to the heart, and hence it leads to that engagement. So that is something that I think organically, it was not as if, I woke up one day and I had that flash of insight. It was something that was building up over a period of time, seeing people engaging, seeing leaders engaging, who are the ones who are really working in change and making that difference. And also hearing equally that some of our leaders are not inspiring. When they talk, people don't understand them, people don't remember them, they're boring, they are forgettable. Sometimes people also say that our values are just something on the wall.
Oh, that's true.
But we don't see them in action.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at all this made me realize about the natural power of stories. And it's not just about storytelling. We don't want to become better storytellers unless you are in that field, but you want as leaders to be more effective.
That's true.
And one of the first things that you tell people is that I'm helping you achieve fantastic results using a simple tool, which is storytelling. So it's a powerful tool that you can just add to your repertoire. And that's like sort of one of the reasons. And I've seen that in action, especially during when we talk about the future of work and when we look at hybrid and all that. I remember Raghu Krishnamurthy, who's the ex-CHRO of GE. He talked about a person who was on the autistic spectrum. He explained that the person was really struggling to pick up cues on a video call when his organization started working from home. So 1 or 2 weeks, he was just interrupting people he shouldn't be interrupting. He was silent when he was needing to speak because he was missing all the cues.
Sure.
But that's when his manager listened with her eyes. And this is where the human side of it comes up. She called him up and she said, "What's wrong? Help me understand. You don't seem to be where you are. Is there something I can do to help you?" And he was so grateful for that conversation. He told her that he was on the autistic spectrum because it was not very obvious. And he said, "I'm really struggling with the natural, normal conversational cues." So she said, "Okay, I'll figure out a solution for you." Sure. And she instituted a protocol over the next couple of meetings that every time somebody wanted to interrupt, they would hold up a pink slip.
Okay.
Or if they finished speaking, they would say, "Roger," just like you do in a walkie-talkie kind of a thing. So people found it strange at the beginning. You can imagine that, Mandeep. But she said that one of her colleagues is having difficulty following this. So I'm instituting these rules so that no person is left behind.
Fantastic. Yes.
Oh,
I think that is a remarkable story. Soundari, what has been the hardest part? Because I know between moving countries, motherhood, also reinventing yourself in so many ways. I always ask this thing to people who are self-employed or start their own work, that which has been the hardest part. Specifically, you knew it, your mom knew it, your husband knew it, how talented you were. And you were putting a kind of a really hold on, a pause on your career and taking on a lot of things. And over the years, post Grundlays, I have seen your pottery making. I have seen so many things that you have done. So please tell me that what was the hardest part?
Yeah. Sometimes these challenges are challenges only in retrospect, right? At that point of time, you're in the thick of things.
Thick of things.
But the learning happens in reflection of experiences. So I think it's a great question to sit and reflect also what it is. I say, I call myself CEO, which is Chief Everything Officer.
Good one.
So as somebody, and you will relate to this. So you think up of an idea, you type out the idea on or proposal on a comp or a paper, wherever, and then you put it on an envelope, you seal the envelope, you lick the stamp, you post it, then you do the follow-up. So you're really the one person, especially as a solopreneur. Of course, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to work alone. But for me, in my case, that's the thing. So it's almost like, you're going skydiving. You have this parachute on your back, you're linked up to this instructor, you're standing on the edge with your arms flared out, looking at the sky and the world below. There's this whole adrenaline rush that's coming, which is partly fear, which is partly excitement. So just that fear to get out of that comfort zone. The first battle is always with yourself.
Yes.
Right. I remember Martina Navratilova was asked once about, how do you continue playing when you're 40? And she said, the tennis ball doesn't know my age.
Good one.
Most of the game is played between that 6-inch space between your 2 years. That's where the game is. And that's, I think, dealing with yourself, that's the single biggest challenge. For me specifically, especially when I moved to Hong Kong, I didn't have a corporate life here when I started. So when you're starting as an entrepreneur without that corporate connection, there can be challenges on business development around it. How do you do it? So I used to,
different country, different system, ecosystem. Exactly. Yeah.
right. So I spent a lot of time in my own version of hustle, which is attending a lot of chamber events, a lot of networking events, going there, preparing ahead, finding out who's going to be there, and trying to just have one or two conversations. I was not doling out visiting cards or receiving loads of visiting cards. I focused on, specifically looking at who do I want to connect with, who can I learn from, what is it that I want to know about this space. So it was a very conscious kind of a networking, but with the intention of just finding out more about what works here, what's going on here, with all that curiosity of what can I learn from here, which can ultimately, of course, connect back to my work as well. I remember there was this interview series that I was doing called Handshake, and I wanted to connect with one particular person who was going to be on a panel. So I landed up for the panel discussion. I sat right in the first row. And after the panel discussion was over, just walked up to him and said, I'd like to interview you for this. And, it'd be really great. We're not having so many local folks coming on to this show, and we'd love you to do it. And it was just like 1 minute taken aback, but he probably gave me his card, and very kind of him. He came on the show. So I think some of it is just going out of that fear factor first and going ahead and just doing it, part of it. And also sometimes, and you've done this, Mandeep, I mean, sometimes it's just looking at it as a self competition.
That's true. That's a big
you're only setting the bar for yourself.
Yeah. Considering you came from banking and whole working with consulting and Unilever and everything, between the left brain and the right brain, which one of it gets used more now? I love to ask specifically because you've had so many changes and you're still evolving.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I say that I have my accountant on one shoulder and I have the human side of the work on the other shoulder. One is a devil, one is an angel, and I shall not say which is which, but somehow they all are nicely integrated in some ways. It's always a bit of both, right? There's so much of creativity in the work that we do, in storytelling as well. And Brené Brown talks about stories as data with a soul. So you're still using data. It's not a vendetta against bullet points or anything. You're still using the data, but you're embellishing it with a story so that you can bring the data in the correct insight. You're combining both together. And I think it's more and more, especially as I age, I think it's more and more also figuring out that the brain has a delete button. So it's like a garden. You're seeding, farming, and you're also pruning so that it's a better brain garden. How do you Marie Kondo your brain? Keep things that spark joy for you, feed what needs to grow, sleep well, and rejuvenate and all that. And, to the thing about all these, when we were in school and college and all, there was on emphasis on learning and using those big words. You'd get full marks in school if you wrote all these complex arguments, right? But in the real world, after school, you realize how useless some of that part of the education is. It's rote, especially in today's world where everything is Googleable. That bit is the road bit.
I think the real skill lies in dumbing it down so people can understand what you're
Totally.
saying. In fact, my ex-boss, CEO of HDFC Bank, he used to simplify everything in such a way that a guy in a remote place could understand what his vision was. And I think that is what matters at the end of the day, that do people get it, what you're trying to say, and do you get that?
Indra Nooyi actually says this, that this is her hip pocket skill. How do you simplify the complex? And in a lot of her roles that she played, she was called in when anything needed to be simplified. Right. And I think that's what storytelling also does. It creates a messaging which is simple, which makes it memorable, sticky, and impactful. And I think that's the skill that we all need to learn.
Absolutely. So now that I'm looking at what is Sound Bites 11 going to do, what gives you more fulfillment, what's in store for what kind of things are on your plate. I just saw that you got a director's certification and etc. You're coming to India more often now that your kids are studying overseas. So tell me, what is something which gives you fulfillment that you like to do in the days to come?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there was this Forbes article which talked about the stages of women's life. Saying that, in the 20s, it's about ambition. In the 30s, it's about culture shock. You're going into the workplace and it's not what it's meant to be.
In
the 40s,
yes.
Yeah, totally right. And you've seen that. And in the 40s, it's reacceleration. And at that time when the article was written, it says 50 plus a self-actualization.
Hey.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think at that time, maybe the whole life expectancy thing was maybe, much shorter. But today we're talking about 100-year life. Yes. So all these bands don't need to fit in that way. But I do look at it from a self-actualization point of view in terms of creating a portfolio of careers that you can look up and look to do those variety different things. Last weekend was Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting, Warren Buffett's famous do. And one of the concepts that he talks about is creating circles of competence, which is working in your core area, looking at your strengths, creating your boundaries. But the interesting part of it, and people normally read it as then not stepping out of comfort zone, staying in a cocoon. No, interesting part of it is constantly expanding your circle of competence as well. So it doesn't have to be one thing, but be good at that. Use your strength, focus on it, keep your boundaries. Don't, avoid unforced errors, as they say in tennis. And the other part of it is looking at how many such circles of competence can you create. So currently I have my consulting work, which is my mainstay part of it. I'm enjoying teaching at the universities, which I discovered pre-COVID, but it's something that's really given me a lot of joy, especially when you get a message from somebody who's been on the course, who says, I used what you said in the thing and this really worked and this has helped. I think that's a big high personally, but of course the satisfaction of knowing that you touch some lives. And the third bit is on the NGO work, the mentoring work, the coaching work that I do. And I want to link, R. Gopalakrishnan. He talks about what he does, and this is my mini version of it. He talks about what he does currently. He calls it as he's wasting time. And he defines waste as writing, advising, speaking, teaching, and exercising. And I think that's the portfolio I want to have.
That's very, very nicely. That typical of him to say something like tongue in cheek. He's a very interesting man, and he always comes up with that. So I think I wanted to now ask you, what is your success mantra?
Yeah. After having had a career, and I was speaking with my sister about this, and we said that all our lives and careers, and you will totally relate to this, Mandeep, it's almost like a river. So sometimes it's flown like, it's full gushing. It's been like a torrent. It's gushed like a rapid. Sometimes it's silently gone underground. Sometimes it's come together through planes, it's navigated, it's been in narrow motion and all that, but it's always been in motion.
Yes.
So whether you're moving slow, moving fast, or moving steady, finding that destination where you want to be. And I think for me, it is constantly looking at, there's this lady called Miru Hirano. She's with this organization called Cinnamon. And she says that, for dreams, life is like almost like, don't fixate to your dream with your current state of mind, with your current ability. That's absolutely limiting yourself. So I want to constantly update my dreams as I grow, as I evolve, and as I learn, so do my dreams. So I have this ask for myself, which is constantly changing, which gives me all the flexibility to do a lot of other things. And it does come from a space of comfort. I always tell a lot of the young mentees that please invest heavily in your early years.
Yes.
That gives you so much of leeway and so much of scope for you to pick on your passion projects. Today, whether I work just in leadership development space, or when I work specifically on diversity and inclusion, being able to share those examples that will make a difference. And you can see literally almost the penny drop when you talk about some of these instances with people, being able to show rather than to, push an idea. Yes. Using some of these skills, I think that's really what is working out well for me.
In fact, what I was remembering while you were talking about it earlier was I worked with Professor Linda Creighton when I was in Singapore. And one thing which concept that she's really spoken about is something called boundary spanning, which is across that when you move across things and learn so much, it leads to innovation of your own and more thinking and fertile things and efficient solving of the thing. And if you meet the same people over and over again, then your thinking gets very limited. So I think one of the things that the people who are self-employed and solopreneurs, they're forced to actually meet people from other domains and collaborate with them. They should. I think that's the ideal way, because that's how the learning happens. For me, at least, I worked for 25 odd years before getting into starting something on my own. So, and that also, really been there, done that, and into a very, very distinct part of the banking sphere. Consulting has been, that's why fun, and I can see that how you're enjoying this. I remember the quiz contest and once coming online and seeing it when I was in Singapore. That was something which you used to do very well, Soundari, and I keep hoping to see a lot of this work and following you on YouTube, and hope the WIP women can interact with you more and ask you something about, you should be on one of our panels and talk to us about a lot of things which are happening with women. We would
absolutely would love that. In fact, I mean, to your point on this whole consultant space, and the kind of opportunities that it opens up, because people know I'm on this space, I constantly keep getting articles or people connected to me. And these are amazing people doing great work. Recently, somebody connected with me to a lady in the US who's working with career women. Yeah. And we got into this call and we just found, there's sometimes the vibes just connect, as they say. Millennial lingo. But
that's true.
We just got talking, and we've created this series where it was started out of our conversation about how do you engage and retain women at the workplace.
Yeah, I saw that one of yours. Yeah, wonderful chat. Yes.
And this just came out of a casual connect. Somebody that I know here connected me saying, you both seem to be working on similar ideas. Why don't you talk? And we just fixed a call, and then we realized, and this is a whole series that's going to come up. We're going to release a few more videos around it. And it broadened my mind about some of the places that you can think about how these are actionable.
Yes.
There is a cultural context to some of these things, but we discussed a lot of, and in this, what was interesting is that we were able to bring in a lot of examples of how things work. So that is an immediate takeaway for somebody, instead of just saying that this is the theory, it's important to be equitable and all that.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm so happy to have you here today and to host you, Soundari. And I know that we have time limitations, but we will continue to hear from you. And I think we'll have the members follow you as we go on. Thank you so much for giving us some time.
No, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this, and I'd love to come back anytime for any discussion. Chatting with you is a pleasure always. There is a Tamil movie director who says that, working with some people is like holding the hand of a breeze and walking in a garden. This felt like that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Soundari. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, I'm Soundari Mukherjea. I'm an organizational consultant and the CEO at Soundbites 11. My big, hairy, audacious goal is to help leaders and teams drive business outcomes, build a personal brand, and be more human at work through storytelling. And please follow me on LinkedIn or on my YouTube channel. And I look forward to continuing this conversation.